Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the North Kesteven series. This is a large Lincolnshire district centred around the town of Sleaford. There's 75 parishes here, so let's take a look at one of them. Welcome back to North Kesteven, everybody. We're starting this one right in the centre of civilization. You can see behind me two very impressive buildings. You've got a church, which is slightly out of shot to the left, and you've also got the village school just there, right next to each other, and a big sort of car park between the two. This is a lovely village, and I really do hope this weather is not going to turn, because it looks like it's going to rain. I hope it doesn't. Welcome to the beautiful Swinderby. The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Swinderby, Pig Farmstead. This week in North Kesteven we're tackling Swinderby, which we already know a little bit about thanks to the former RAF base at Witham St Hughs. That doesn't fall within the parish boundaries though, so basically today we're covering everything else that does. Swinderby is a pretty village located 8 miles south of Lincoln and just north of the A46. The name Swinderby is assumed to have originated either from words meaning southern farmstead or pig farmstead, and of those it's more likely to have been the latter. Some village buildings here date back to the 17th century, but Swinderby as a settlement may go back to at least Roman times. Roman pottery and parts of the Fosse Way have been found within the village in times past. Swinderby is obviously most well known for its involvement in World War II, but the village has far more of note. There are two schools here, one of which we've met before. The church is also a standout feature, and so too is the railway station, thanks to its unusual level crossing. There's even a Christmas tree farm here too. Also within the boundaries are the Halfway House Motel and HMP Morton Hall, one of the most imposing buildings you will ever see. So let's get walking around and learn a bit more about this quiet corner of North Kesteven. After having to follow a diversion from Witham St Hughs, we start on the A46 at the Halfway House roundabout. This island is named after the Halfway House Inn, which first appeared on maps as a farmstead in 1630 as a result of enclosure. The present Halfway House Inn can be traced back to 1683 when it was a separate holding and dwelling. It was first noted as a pub in 1815, known variously as the Halfway House Inn, the Red Lion, or Morton Woodhouse. It's no longer an inn, but there is still a pub nearby on the avenue called the Dovecote. That too was a farmstead, but 19th century however. Next, we follow the road north from the halfway house through the hamlet of Morton. This is not much more than just a collection of sporadically placed houses and farms, but just before you leave this sparsely spread civilization, things start to get a bit more severe in terms of architecture. We're in the vicinity of a prison, HMP Morton Hall. HMP Morton Hall is a Category C men's prison, but it was previously a women's prison and for a short time was an immigration removal centre. Morton Hall was originally the site of an RAF base, converted into a prison and opened in 1985 before being refitted to become the women's prison in 2001. Morton Hall has held a high percentage of foreign nationals. In 2011 it closed and reopened as an immigration removal centre, holding adult males awaiting deportation. It's since reverted to being a prison, but it's still designed to hold foreigners. The majority of inmates move back to their place of origin when they're released. So as ever, my personal policy when I'm filming a prison is not to stay around too long, reason being that I don't want to gain any unwanted attention. Even though what I'm doing is very innocuous and very innocent, you never know who's watching. With CCTV all over the place, it's probably best to disappear. So disappear we will do, and we're going to head now into Swinderby village and have a nice walk around this place. Hopefully the weather's going to hold out a little bit because it looks like it's going to rain, and I hope it's not, because Swinderby is a lovely village and it would look great in decent weather and not in wet weather. We'll soon find out what it's going to do, eh? Our walk begins at the church and will end at the school next door, arguably the two most prominent buildings in Swinderby. The church is dedicated to All Saints and it's predominantly Norman and Early English. However, restoration was carried out in 1854, 1879 and 1910, meaning the building we see here today is a mishmash of styles. The tower and parts of the south wall are all that remain externally of the original 12th century building. The cornerstones on the tower suggest it was once freestanding, probably to provide refuge for villagers in times of danger. Now let's head through the churchyard towards the Lit Gate, which aside from its usual function also has another job in this village. Believe it or not, it actually doubles as the parish notice board. That's got to go down as one of the most unusual I've ever seen. 48 to go nonetheless. Next door is Kesteven School, and if you think you've heard that name before, you have in the Freesthorpe episode. To recap, Kesteven School is for children aged 8 to 19 with autism and learning disabilities. This is the lower school site. The upper school is the one we saw back in West Lindsey. Over the road we go next to a bus stop. Swinderby is served by two buses, the numbers 48 and 49, which both go to Lincoln. Next to that is an information panel which tells you about the history of the village in great detail. It also shows you some of the landmarks, but I couldn't help but think it was missing a couple. There was no mention of Kesteven School or Morton Hall, for example. The route will now follow the High Street, the road upon which Swinderby grew, making it a linear village. It seems the locals are ready for Easter. Look at this fabulous Easter-themed postbox topper. Both the church and the village were linked to the Knights Templar, who owned land in the Swinderby area. The church was also closely linked to the Disney family. Memorials to generations of that family can be found within All Saints, including an 18th century memorial brass and a wall monument. Swinderby has a lot of listed buildings. Most are in the village centre, but there are a cluster near the railway station too. Other than the church, the oldest building in the village is believed to be the manor house on the High Street, dating from at least the 17th century. Next we come to the old Methodist chapel, which has now become the Light and Life Mission Hall. Swinderby's first Methodist chapel was built in the village in 1824 on land which had once been a small orchard. This was then replaced in 1869 by the present building at a time when enlargement was possible thanks to further land acquisitions. A few steps further I spotted this odd-looking lorry in a driveway, which I thought to be notable. There are several old farmhouses and period cottages around the village. A good example is this building nearby, Holt Farm, built in 1740. To go with that Easter-themed postbox topper, Swinderby's crafters have clearly been busy lately. They've only gone and decorated the entire phone box. There's no phone in here these days, but even if there was, one would struggle to get in to use it, thanks to all that wool. Cracking effort. A few more steps and we find ourselves at the only pub in the main village, the ever-popular Plough Inn. This is a traditional country pub made with oak beams, which have darkened with age. As well as this and the halfway house, Swinderby once had a third pub called the Sir Isaac Newton. Now we come to Jubilee Park, named in honour of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrated 2 years ago. I suspect the park has been here longer than that though, and probably had a more mundane name. It features a decent playground and a big open recreational space. All good. At the far end of the high street is the old schoolhouse, which was replaced with the current school near the church. 19th century, both it and 2 other adjacent buildings are listed Grade 2. Over the road is a house that bears the words Taylor's Transport, but a Google search yielded nothing notable. These days, Swinderby isn't a linear village. Modern development, although not extensive, means that we can make our way back to the beginning again via Manor Road, which runs parallel to the high street. As property goes, Manor Road is a bit of a mixture. This would have been a quiet back lane in times past with just a handful of cottages. Infilling has done the rest of the work here, and now most of the street has modern bungalows dating from the 1940s or later. Swinderby lacks any kind of ultra-modern infilling, however. It's been largely untouched since those days. At the top of Manor Road, if you turn right, you come to the village hall, and as halls go, this one has an interesting background. Initially, the old schoolhouse was used as a reading room for a while, but this became less important in the 1920s, when an officer's mess was brought from Newark, re-erected, and used for 50 years as the village hall instead. The present hall was built in 2 phases in 1977 and 1990, after which the officer's mess was demolished. This serves as the post office too, 1 day a week, and here's a wall plaque commemorating the centenary of the parish council. Okay, so at this point there's a path that runs up the side of the village hall that will take us back towards the northern end of Swinderby. I'm hoping it's not going to be too wet and muddy. Even though it is raining, it's only a light rain, so fingers crossed this isn't going to be too slippery and horrible. We'll see. For the next 10 minutes I found myself dodging not only sodden earth but also Norwegian spruce. The footpath we're following runs through a Christmas tree farm which goes by the name of 3 Wise Men. Maybe I should have brought gold, frankincense and myrrh in its honour, but then again I can't exactly be termed a wise man. I mean, the clue is in the name. These trees are grown all year round, so if you live in Swinderby you're never short of a real tree during the festive season. The path then runs around the back of Kesteven School before turning right towards Station Road. After making that right turn, it became an absolute sludge fest, and I was concentrating more on getting to the road than I was on filming. Hence, we're now on Station Road, making our way back towards the village centre. Until recently, Swinderby's biggest employer was a factory called Fenmarc. Over 300 people worked in the plant, which packaged vegetables. In 2014, Fenmarc was purchased by the company Produce World, but the site became surplus to requirements and was closed down and demolished. Here on Moor Lane, you can see the entrance to the former factory site. It's believed 120 new homes will now be built where Fenmarc was, along with 16,000 square feet of commercial space and 20 retirement homes. That's according to plans submitted to North Kesteven District Council in 2017. Okay, so now we're back in familiar territory, which means the last thing to talk about is Swinderby All Saints CFE School. This was built in 1849 and replaced the original schoolroom at the far end of the high street. This 1.5-storey colour-wash brick building sits under a pretty pitch slate roof. The porch has a small bell tower with the original school bell still in situ. Okay, we've reached the end of the walk. We're back here outside the school and the church. Nice walk apart from the rain. It's actually starting to stop now, would you believe? Typical, isn't it? There's one more thing we need to cover in this parish, and that is Swinderby Station. So we're going to hop in the trusty old motor and head up towards the station to finish this one off. Swinderby Railway Station serves not just the village but also nearby North Skyle, Eagle and of course Morton Hall. Once again we find ourselves on the Nottingham to Lincoln line, where all services are managed by East Midlands Railway. Engineered by George Stephenson, the line opened in 1846 and so too did the station the same year. Swinderby Station has 4 separate listed parts. 2 of them are the platforms. One is the station master's house and the third is the signal box, built in 1901. The box is still manned, and there's a reason for that. Stick with me for a moment. It wasn't planned this way, but I got to the station at a time when a train was just passing through. Any excuse to film one, you know I love trains. Swinderby has an hourly service southbound to Leicester via Nottingham and northbound to Lincoln, although there are some 2-hour gaps between services in the middle of the day. One train every 2 hours continues beyond Lincoln to Grimsby, with a limited service continuing further to Cleethorpes. Now, Swinderby's level crossing is very notable because it's one of the few left in the United Kingdom which is hand operated, and here comes the guy now to open the gates. And once he's done that, we can move on to our next one in North Kesteven. Here we go. You don't see this very often these days, do you? Fantastic. It's great that these still exist. And that's going to do us for Swinderby. I've always loved this village, and I hope you can understand why. There aren't many left now in North Kesteven which I actually know. In fact, next time we'll be in one I've never been to. Look out, Sleaford people, it's one close to you. See you there very soon. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.